Uh, so you're going to talk about the data breach of the Labour Party. Everyone, I think most people on the call know about that, but you've got some more information about it. And you're going to do this in two parts. So this is part one, is it?
It is part one, and I'm going to fly through this as quick as I can because I know you've got a lot of content for today's show. The next part is going to be the one that I'm a little bit scared of because what I've found is a bit worrying.
So you're going to get me sued again, are you, or something?
I'm going to try not to this time.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank.
No worries. So I'm going to share the screen just so you can all see my presentation. I just need a quick thumbs up that you can see it. Lovely, fantastic. Okay, so today I'm going to be covering. Bear with me 2 seconds. I'm going to be covering the data breach, the two data breaches that happened of Blackboard and Tangent. Now, we're going to be covering Blackboard today because Tangent, there's some questions I've got to answer before I go too deep into that. And I want to make sure we're safe before we go down that pathway because it is that bad. So in short, the first data breach that happened was a while ago in 2020. And it basically involved a company called Blackboard, which do charitable software. They do gifting software, they do donation software, that sort of stuff, as well as all sorts of systems that allow all of this data to be collated, to manage your donors, all of the profiles of the people involved. And as you can see on here, this is an article from The Guardian. It was noted, it was brought to their attention. They blamed it on Russia, and they said that access to data had been restricted, it had been encrypted by these crooks, these hoodlums, and that some of it had been leaked as well. And they suggested that it had happened sometime between February and May. Information stolen included names, email addresses, phone numbers, and sums donated. So this is important. This basically means that people's political affiliations and the money that they're putting forward could be made public. It could be used against people, blackmail, all sorts of stuff. Also, the party allegedly said that they'd received assurances that the data was destroyed as a result. That's important. So let's move on. So let's learn a little bit about Blackboard. Blackboard's CEO is Mike Giannoni, and he's a very sort of well thought of chap in tech circles. So well thought of, in fact, that I can't find any articles or any information about him that's critical about him anywhere online at all, which, as we all know, is deeply unusual. So that suggests that things have been scrubbed. So according to this, basically, Giannoni took charge of Blackboard in 2014, and so far he appears to have done a very, very good job. The crucial information in here is that Blackboard has laughably been included in Newsweek's list of America's most responsible companies and was recognized as a US Chamber of Commerce Foundation Citizens Award winner. How lovely. During Giannoni's tenure, Blackboard has grown to serve millions of users across more than 100 countries, including 1 out of 3 of Fortune 500 companies, 80% of the most influential nonprofits, 30 of the 32 largest non-profit hospitals, 93% of higher education institutions with billion-dollar campaigns. Bear in mind, this is all in the US. 25 of the largest Catholic dioceses in the US and more. And also earlier the month that the article was printed, Blackboard announced its acquisition of Everfi, which is similar to Blackboard but covers different areas. So that includes environmental, social, and governance, ESG as it's shortened to. So that basically means they were crossing into politics, they were crossing into education, governance, local councils, that sort of thing. In short, they are making a huge amount of money from charitable donations, from the systems behind enabling charitable donations, and so on and so forth. So this is when I found out that they were also servicing the NRA, the National Rifle Association, that wonderful lobby for guns everywhere, as in almost unrestricted ownership of guns and their use. But they were also servicing some far-right organizations called the Heritage Foundation and the Center for Security Policy. According to TechCrunch, they've made quite a bit of money out of these organizations. And they're very quiet about it. They don't reveal that they're working with these organizations organisations they don't want to shout that they're doing social good for these organisations. And I suppose it depends on your definition of what a social good is. Now, the problem we've got here is, the Labour Party is using this company, which is a problem for us. So let's move on. In terms of what happened, the Blackboard CEO, Mr. Giannoni, basically said, we discovered and stopped a sophisticated attempted ransomware attack. They failed to mention that they just paid them off. So they didn't prevent it, they paid them off. They used insurance money to pay them off. And Blackboard accepted the criminal assurances that the stolen data would be deleted. It's been deleted, Crispin. Honest. You might as well have a swag bag and a mask on. Although the firm insisted that financial data had not been accessed by the criminals, personal data stored on its servers by subscribing companies was. So again, we're relying on a company that's being less than transparent about actually having this whole thing happen at all, assuring us that no financial information was stolen. And then they basically said, insurance has paid it all off, job done. Victims of the Blackboard-enabled ransomware attack included a whole host of universities, charities, including the National Trust, and according to media reports, the UK's Labour Party, one of the only political organisations to be targeted in this way by this hack, which is interesting. Let's move on. So I found a book that discusses this hack, written by a chap called Mr. Jenkinson. I believe it's a Mr. And in short, I'll read you the passages that are relevant. Due to the extensive clientele within specific sectors, Blackboard had something of a monopoly, and clients made assumptions that if Blackboard services were good enough for charity A, then they should also outsource their business and administration to them. Sadly, much of this was done without too many checks or thorough due diligence, and Blackboard clearly became, like far too many organisations, complacent and ignored their own security, which in turn, due to the company's connectivity, undermined their clients' security. In May 2020, Blackboard was breached, and the attackers managed to exfiltrate data and corporate data from hundreds, possibly thousands of their clients before being detected. The breach was made public in July 2020, several weeks later. Now, bear in mind, we didn't know about any of this when this was happening. None of us had been told that our data was compromised. This should have acted as a wake-up call for those winning outsourced technical deals and those outsourcing. However, what has become apparent on this and many more breaches and is that basically, even in this case, charities and not-for-profit organisations, is that no one is undertaking proper due diligence on their providers, suppliers or clients. Assumptions are simply being made. And down below, I've highlighted clients that were guilty of not undertaking any due diligence and were not addressing their own security. They would also fall victim, i.e. the Labour Party. The Blackboard breach followed the trend of the company being infiltrated. Yes, you guessed it, whilst they had numerous insecure and unmanaged domains, and then were infiltrated totally unbeknown and malware injected. That's what's known as an SQL injection attack. I'm a bit of a geek when it comes to this sort of stuff. At the same time, the fashion continued to not only encrypt some of the data, but also to remove some of the data to leverage their position. So these are the hackers taking out selective data to create value in the negotiation process about how they extract a ransom from the organizations involved. And one can never assume a criminal will have integrity. I mean, why would you? They're criminals. We undertook research on Blackboard's internet-facing position just days after their breach and are convinced we would find a plethora of systemic insecure domains, subdomains that would be easily identified pre the breach by the cyber attackers. We were not surprised to find our suspicions confirmed. It was almost as if some of these huge technical giants wanted to either call on the attacks or they could collectively be massively negligent. Numerous Blackboard not secure domains, invalid, expired, non-matched certificates, and so on, could be seen as criminal negligence and seen as such. Security is not about Blackboard or any company that gets breached. Moreover, it should be the fact that companies ignored and placed their clients in high-risk positions. So what we're basically seeing here is acknowledged negligence, criminal-level negligence, and absolute, ignorance and almost indifference to data security of the party. Our data, they just didn't care. Blackboard didn't care. The Labour Party didn't care. Any other organisations involved apparently didn't care. It's infuriating. Now, Blackboard's consequential breach tally is currently more than 125 companies, including charities and counting. The breach seems to be yesterday's news and the new norm. This breach, as thousands of others, was due to their initial negligence. In short, they just didn't care. Our data has been exposed for months. We didn't know anything about it. And my suspicion is that this is why the Labour Party are taking so very long to sort this out, because there are huge court cases going on in the background, behind the Labour Party situation. And my guess is that the Labour Party are going to try and use the other court cases that are going on to shield themselves from some of the cost. Now, it's very important that we consider this part as well. The second hack was from an agency called Tangent. And this is the one that I'm going to be very, very careful around, very careful. This is a completely different hack, potentially related to the Blackboard hack, as a separate hack, but as a result of the first hack, if that makes sense. I'm trying to be very clear here. This happened at the end of 2021, and that's after the previous hack. Now, if they haven't updated their systems to take into account the issues from the first hack, what does that mean? That means they're being potentially criminally negligent with our data, which is a problem. Tangent basically said no to paying the ransom, unlike Blackboard, which meant all of that data was encrypted and essentially deleted. They couldn't get access to it. The Labour Party, because they don't have the staff, they've made massive staff cuts. They can't handle what that means. So in terms of selections, in terms of member management, in terms of membership payments, all the data's gone. And as far as we can tell, they're only just beginning to get these systems back up and online. It also means that CLPs aren't being able to function properly. As Squawkbox reported, it looks like the data loss is permanent. And according to an email sent by Labour General Secretary David Evans, Tangent refused to pay the ransom demanded by the criminals who have permanently corrupted it and prevented Labour from accessing it. 5 months after the initial breach and 2 months after the party admitted to its members, Labour's membership system is still down, and it's hard to see how the cash-strapped husk of what was recently a great party can afford what must be the massive task of rebuilding its database. In short, it can't. This is a massive, massive roadblock. The class actions, multiple class actions going on from members against what's happening here could bankrupt the party. I don't see how they can afford to pay this off. I don't see how they can afford to rebuild these systems. I do not see how any of this can happen. And it looks, reading between the lines, like there is the potential for criminal charges to happen against certain organizations and certain people in those organizations in terms of the level of negligence and disregard for people's data and safety that has been displayed in this process. I'm not going to go any further on Tangent Marketing Services Limited, because what I've found in the next session, I have to verify this stuff. But if it's true, then it suggests a whole different paradigm behind this issue. That's me for today.